Gentle sounds of a distant harpsichord drift through gilded corridors as candlelight flickers against ornate wallpaper. The quiet rustle of silk and cotton as figures move through shadowed hallways. The soft echo of footsteps on marble floors. Please, subscribe. It's our responsibility to lull you to sleep every night. Close your eyes and journey back to 18th century France, where the Palace of Versailles awaits your arrival. Feel the weight of your simple linen clothing. Smell the blend of beeswax candles and fresh bread from the kitchens. Your breath slows as you settle into the rhythm of palace life, where each day brings the same comforting routine amidst unimaginable splendor. You wake to darkness, the faint glow of early dawn barely visible through the small window of your shared quarters in the servants' wing of Versailles. The straw mattress beneath you rustles as you shift, careful not to disturb the 3 other servants who share this modest space. The cool morning air brushes against your face as you slowly pull yourself from beneath the woolen blanket that has kept you warm through the night. Your fingers find the rough cotton of your simple garments, neatly folded on the small wooden stool beside your bed. Dressing is a ritual of practiced movements performed in near silence. Your hands know each tie and button without needing light to guide them. The weight of your servant's uniform settles on your shoulders, a reminder of your place within the grand machinery of the palace. The fabric is worn but clean, carefully, maintained by your own hands during precious moments of free time. You slide your feet into leather shoes that have molded to the shape of your feet after countless steps along the palace corridors. Outside your window, the palace gardens remain shrouded in pre-dawn mist, the famous fountains mere shadows in the distance. You take a moment to splash water from the basin onto your face, the shock of cold bringing full awareness as droplets trail down your neck. A quick comb through your hair and you are presentable enough for the day ahead, though no courtier would glance twice at your appearance. The wooden floor creaks beneath your feet as you make your way down the narrow servants' staircase, one hand trailing along the cool stone wall for guidance in the dim light. The scent of baking bread grows stronger with each step, a comforting promise of the simple breakfast that awaits the household staff before the demanding day begins. Other servants emerge from their quarters, exchanging quiet nods of recognition rather than conversation. Words are saved for necessary communication during working hours. The servants' hall buzzes with subdued activity, dozens of people preparing for their roles in the daily performance that is life at Versailles. You find your place at one of the long wooden tables, accepting a bowl of porridge and a small piece of bread from the kitchen staff. The food is simple but filling, designed to sustain you through long hours of service. You eat methodically, savoring each spoonful while listening to the murmured conversations around you, snippets of palace gossip and warnings about which nobles are in particularly demanding moods. Your supervisor appears at the doorway, signaling that it's time to begin the day's work. You rise, brushing crumbs from your clothing, and follow the familiar path to the linen storage rooms. Today, like most days, you will be responsible for replacing and laundering the fine sheets and towels used by the nobility. Your fingers will touch fabrics finer than anything you could ever hope to own. Delicate laces from Flanders, soft cottons from the colonies, and silks traded from distant lands. The palace is beginning to stir as you push your cart of fresh linens through the service corridors. These hidden passageways, a second palace within the palace, allow servants to move unseen between rooms, maintaining the illusion that the chambers of the nobility magically clean and prepare themselves. The walls here are unadorned, the floors simple stone rather than polished marble. Occasional peepholes Let servants check if rooms are occupied before entering. You pause outside the first bedchamber on your list, listening for signs of occupancy. Hearing nothing, you knock softly before using your key to enter. The room belongs to a lady-in-waiting to the Queen, currently absent as she attends her mistress. Sunlight now streams through tall windows, illuminating a space larger than the entire home where you grew up. You work efficiently, stripping the used linens from the bed and replacing them with fresh ones, your hands smoothing each crease with practiced precision. The chamber is filled with objects that represent more wealth than you will see in your lifetime. A silver brush set on the vanity, porcelain figurines arranged on shelves, a clock with gold detailing that ticks steadily in the corner. You have learned never to linger over these treasures, never to touch anything unnecessarily. Your eyes remain downcast as you work, focusing only on your assigned tasks. When the bed is perfectly made, the corners crisp, the counterpane evenly arranged, you gather the used linens into your cart. Next, you replace the towels in the adjacent dressing room and empty the porcelain basin, filling it with fresh water scented with lavender. The lady's personal maid will handle her clothing and jewels. Your domain is limited to the room itself. Throughout the morning, you move from chamber to chamber, repeating this ritual. Some rooms are occupied, requiring you to return later, while others sit empty, their noble inhabitants already engaged in the complex social dance of court life. You work in a rhythm that has become second nature. Strip, fold, replace, smooth. Occasionally, you encounter other servants, valets preparing clothing, maids dusting ornate furniture, footmen delivering messages, all moving with the same quiet efficiency that keeps the palace functioning. By midday, the sun sits high over the gardens, casting patterns through the enormous windows that line the palace corridors. You pause briefly by one, allowing yourself a rare moment to gaze out at the geometric patterns of the formal gardens. Gardeners smaller than ants from this distance tend to the precisely trimmed hedges and colourful flower beds. Fountains throw water high into the air, creating rainbows in the sunlight. This view, this moment of beauty, is one small compensation for the life of service you lead. The chiming of a distant clock reminds you that time is precious. You return to your cart, pushing it toward the service stairs that will take you down to the laundry rooms. The weight increases with each chamber you service, the cart growing heavier with soiled linens. The stairs are narrow and steep, requiring careful navigation. The temperature rises as you descend below ground level, the air growing damper with each step. The laundry rooms are a world of steam and effort, where dozens of servants work in stifling heat to keep the palace clean. Enormous copper tubs bubble with soapy water, while drying racks stretch along the walls. The air is thick with humidity and the scent of lye soap. You deliver your cart to the laundry mistress, who notes each item with meticulous attention. Even here, in this underground domain of servants, there is hierarchy. You are merely a collector and deliverer, while others will do the actual washing. With your morning duties complete, you are permitted a brief respite for the midday meal. The servants' hall is less crowded now, as staff work in shifts to ensure the palace functions continuously. You accept a bowl of vegetable soup and another piece of bread, finding a place at the end of a table. Your feet ache from the morning's walking, your shoulders tight from pushing the heavy cart. Still, you eat without complaint, knowing that many in France would envy your position, a roof over your head, regular meals, and the prestige of serving in the royal household. Afternoon brings a different set of responsibilities. Today, you are assigned to assist with cleaning the Hall of Mirrors, the most magnificent space in the palace. Working in teams, servants polish the hundreds of mirrors and crystal chandeliers that make this gallery famous throughout Europe. You are given soft cloths and special solutions, instructed to remove every fingerprint and speck of dust from the lower mirrors within your reach. The hall stretches seemingly endlessly before you, sunlight pouring through the windows on one side, reflecting infinitely in the mirrors on the opposite wall. Each mirror is framed in gilt bronze, each chandelier dripping with crystal prisms. You work methodically, moving backward toward the entrance to ensure you don't leave footprints on the freshly polished floor. As you clean, you occasionally catch glimpses of yourself, a small figure in simple clothing, momentarily visible among the opulence. In these mirrors, kings and queens have admired their reflections, ambassadors have been received, and treaties that changed the map of Europe have been signed. Yet now they reflect only servants like yourself, moving like ghosts through the empty hall. Your work is interrupted when a group of nobles enters the far end of the gallery. Immediately, you and the other servants become invisible, moving to the sides of the room, eyes downcast, waiting for the party to pass. You recognize the Duchess de Polignac by her elaborate gown and distinctive laugh, accompanied by several gentlemen in embroidered coats. They stroll through the gallery without acknowledging the servants who freeze in place, becoming as much a part of the background as the furniture. Only when they have passed completely do you resume your work, the rhythm briefly disturbed. This is the way of life at Versailles. You exist in parallel to the nobility, occupying the same spaces but entirely separate worlds. They move through rooms you have just cleaned, sleep in beds you have just made, but rarely notice the hands that maintain their surroundings. As afternoon fades into evening, chandeliers and candelabras throughout the palace must be lit. This daily ritual transforms Versailles, the natural light giving way to the warm glow of thousands of candles. You are given a long taper and assigned to a section of the state apartments. Working quickly with other servants, you move from one candle to another, the flame of your taper bringing each wick to life. The palace changes character as darkness falls outside. The candlelight softens the gilt surfaces, makes diamonds and jewels sparkle more intensely, and casts dramatic shadows in corners and alcoves. The nobility, too, seem transformed, their powdered faces and colourful clothing designed specifically for this golden illumination, rather than the revealing light of day. Evening brings the most demanding hours for palace servants, as the nobility engages in entertainments that require constant attention. Some servants will be visible during this time: footmen serving dinner, pages carrying messages, musicians performing in corners. But you remain behind the scenes. Your evening task is to prepare bedchambers for their occupants' eventual retirement. You turn down beds, placing warming pans between the sheets to combat the perpetual chill of the stone palace. You ensure that nightclothes are laid out, that water is fresh, that chamber pots are emptied and clean. Every detail must be perfect, as the nobility expect their rooms to be ready whenever they choose to retire, whether at midnight or dawn. From the service corridors, you hear the distant sounds of revelry, music, laughter, the clink of glasses. The king may be hosting a concert. The queen might be at her gaming tables. Courtiers could be dancing or engaging in political intrigue disguised as social pleasantries. Their evening is beginning just as your long day approaches its end. Your work complete for now, you return to the servants' hall for the final meal of the day. The atmosphere is more relaxed as the pressures of daytime service ease. Some servants play cards in corners, others mend clothing by candlelight. The food is often better in the evening. Leftovers from the noble tables sometimes find their way down to the servants' quarters, though stripped of the most luxurious components. Conversation flows more freely now, servants exchanging stories of their day. You learn that the king was in good humour, that a countess quarrelled with a duchess over precedence, that a foreign diplomat arrived with exotic gifts. These snippets form your understanding of the world beyond your immediate tasks, piecing together the grand events of Versailles through whispers and observations. After supper, you have a rare hour to yourself before sleep. Some servants use this time to write letters home, others to handle personal mending or washing. A few gather to sing, quietly, or share stories from their villages. You choose to sit near the small window in your quarters, watching the moon rise over the gardens. The fountains have been turned off for the night. The formal landscape, now a study in silver and shadow. In these quiet moments, you sometimes imagine the lives of the nobility sleeping above, their dreams perhaps not so different from your own, despite the vast gulf in circumstance. They too know love, fear, ambition, disappointment. They too will end their days in the same manner as any servant. This thought brings a certain peace as you prepare for sleep. Your bed, though simple, welcomes your tired body. The sounds of the palace settling for the night create a familiar lullaby. Distant footsteps, the creak of ancient beams, the murmur of other servants preparing for sleep. Tomorrow will bring the same tasks, the same rhythms, the same invisible service within the gleaming walls of Versailles. As your consciousness begins to drift, you recall moments from the day, the perfect folds of fresh linen, the endless reflections. In the hall of mirrors, the brief glimpse of garden beauty through a tall window. These small pleasures are woven into the fabric of your existence, tiny treasures collected through a life of service in the most magnificent palace in Europe. Sleep comes easily, your body surrendering to exhaustion. In your dreams, you sometimes walk freely through the gardens, touch the treasures you polish daily, speak openly with the kings and queens whose chambers you prepare. But morning will return you to reality, the structured, ordered world of service that forms the foundation upon which the splendor of Versailles rests. With each breath growing slower and deeper, you release the day's efforts and surrender to slumber. The palace continues its nighttime existence around you, guards patrolling corridors, night servants tending fires, nobles engaging in intrigues or pleasures in candlelit rooms. But here, in your small corner of Versailles, there is only the gentle rhythm of your breath and the promise of dawn that will begin the cycle anew. The gentle rhythm of daily routines carries you through each day at Versailles, but it is your encounters with the nobility that truly define your experience within these gilded walls. As you drift deeper into sleep, let your mind wander to those moments when your world briefly intersects with theirs. You stand perfectly still against the wall of the antechamber, hands clasped before you, eyes lowered respectfully. Your breathing is measured, almost imperceptible. You have mastered the art of presence without presence, being visible only when needed, a living piece of the palace furnishings otherwise. The heavy brocade curtains frame tall windows overlooking the orangery gardens, where winter citrus, trees bask in rare February sunshine. Though you've stood here for nearly an hour, protocol forbids any sign of discomfort or fatigue. Today you serve as a chamber attendant, assigned to wait upon a visiting duchess from Austria who has been granted an apartment in the north wing. Your duties are simple yet demanding: to anticipate needs before they are voiced, to respond instantly to requests, to maintain absolute discretion about anything you might see or hear. The nobility speak freely in front of servants, having learned from childhood to consider you as invisible as the walls. The door opens with a whisper of polished hinges, and the Duchess enters in a rustle of silk taffeta. Her gown is a confection of pale blue adorned with silver embroidery, her powdered hair arranged in an elaborate style that adds inches to her already impressive height. Two ladies-in-waiting follow, carrying fans and small embroidered bags. None of the three women acknowledge your presence as they settle into the gilded chairs arranged near the fireplace. The journey was interminable. The Duchess sighs, removing her gloves one finger at a time. The roads in this country remain abominable despite all the taxes collected to improve them. Her French is perfect, but carries the slight accent of her homeland. You remain motionless, absorbing every word while appearing deaf to the conversation. One of the ladies notices the fire burning low and makes a small gesture in your direction. Without waiting for a verbal command, you move forward smoothly, taking up the brass tongs to rearrange the logs and add a new one from the stack kept discreetly beside the hearth. You work silently, efficiently, stirring the embers to encourage the flames before retreating back to your position against the wall. The Queen asks after your health, one lady says to the Duchess. She hopes you will join her intimate circle this evening for cards. The Duchess's face transforms at the mention of the Queen, a calculated smile replacing her previous expression of discontent. How kind of Her Majesty. Of course, I would be delighted. We have much to discuss about the situation in Vienna. You absorb this information passively, knowing that such an invitation carries significance beyond a simple game of cards. The Queen's private circle is the inner sanctum of influence at court, where words exchanged over playing cards can determine the fate of ministers and policies. The Duchess's presence there suggests connections that reach beyond mere social pleasantries. The conversation shifts to court gossip, who has fallen from favour, whose marriage is troubled, which courier has accumulated gambling debts that might make them vulnerable to influence. You listen without reaction, your face a mask of polite indifference. Over years of service, you have learned that information flows freely in your presence, precisely because you are deemed incapable of using it. A bell chimes softly in the distance, marking the changing of the guard in the palace corridors. The Duchess rises suddenly, indicating that she wishes to change her attire before the midday meal. The green silk with the cream lace, she instructs one of her ladies, and send word to the kitchens that I will take chocolate in my chambers. This last command is aimed generally in your direction, though she does not meet your eyes. You bow slightly and back from the room, turning only when you reach the doorway. The service corridors of Versailles form a parallel palace, narrow, passages allowing servants to move unseen between the grand apartments. You navigate them with practiced ease, descending a tight spiral staircase to the lower level where messengers wait to carry communications to different departments of the household. In the small antechamber where palace messengers gather between assignments, you find a young boy in palace livery. Chocolate for the Austrian Duchess, you instruct him. The blue apartments in the north wing. He nods and departs immediately, his knowledge of the palace layout as detailed as your own despite his youth. Rather than returning directly to the Duchess's chambers, you take a moment to observe the main corridor through a discreet peephole built into the wall. This is not idle curiosity, but practical caution, learning which nobles are visiting, which apartments help servants avoid awkward interruptions or prepare for additional guests. Today, you note that the Minister of War passes with his entourage, likely heading to the King's Council chambers. The knowledge that important military discussions will take place today ripples through the servant network, prompting adjustments in routines to accommodate the extended meetings that will follow. When you return to the Duchess's apartments, you find she has retreated to her bedroom with her personal maid for dressing. Your role now is to prepare the receiving room for the visitors who will inevitably arrive to pay respects to the noble guest. You straighten cushions, arrange fresh flowers in crystal vases, and ensure that the writing desk is supplied with paper, ink, and properly trimmed quills. The chocolate arrives, carried by a footman on a silver tray. The delicate porcelain cup steams gently, the rich aroma filling the room. You direct him to place it in the Duchess's bedroom, then resume your position of watchful stillness. Before long, the first visitors arrive. A marquis and his wife, cousins to the Duchess by marriage. You open the door with a deep bow, announcing them in the formal manner required by etiquette. The Duchess emerges from her bedroom transformed, her hair freshly arranged, her green silk gown rustling with each movement. Kisses are exchanged on cheeks, pleasantries offered in the elaborate language of the court. "My dear cousin," the Marquise exclaims, "how well you look despite your journey. The air of Versailles clearly agrees with you." The Duchess smiles, gesturing for her guests to be seated. "The palace remains as magnificent as ever," she replies, "though I find the dampness affects my constitution more than it once did." You glide forward to serve small glasses of sweet wine from a decanter kept ready for such visits. The conversation continues around you as though you were merely another piece of furniture. Discussions of mutual acquaintances, diplomatic appointments, and the latest fashions from Paris. You serve and withdraw, attentive to empty glasses, and shifting positions that might indicate additional needs. As the morning progresses, more visitors arrive. Each brings news and gossip, political whispers, and social invitations. The Duchess receives them all with practiced grace, navigating the complex waters of court politics with the skill of one born to its currents. You note how her manner shifts subtly with each guest, warmer with potential allies, more reserved with those whose loyalty remains questionable. A commotion in the corridor announces a visitor of particular importance. The door opens to reveal the Princesse de Lamballe, superintendent of the Queen's household and one of Her Majesty's closest friends. Everyone in the room rises immediately, the previous conversations forgotten in the presence of this intimate of the Queen. "Your Highness!" The Duchess curtsies deeply, genuine pleasure illuminating her features. "What an unexpected honor!" The Princess smiles warmly, gesturing for the Duchess to rise. "Her Majesty sent me personally to ensure you are comfortably settled and to convey her eagerness to see you this evening." She glances around at the other visitors, who immediately understand they are dismissed. With murmured apologies and hasty bows, they withdraw, leaving the Princess and Duchess alone, but for your silent presence against the wall. Once the door closes behind the last visitor, the tone shifts dramatically. The Princess drops the formal, court manner, taking the Duchess's hands in her own. "Marie is desperate for news from your brother," she says, referring to the Queen by her given name. The King's ministers intercept her correspondence, and she trusts your discretion implicitly. The Duchess nods, glancing briefly in your direction. Noticing her concern, the Princess waves a dismissive hand. "The room servants are all trustworthy. The Queen has made certain of it. This casual confirmation of your reliability comes as no surprise. Palace servants are carefully vetted before being assigned to politically sensitive guests." I have letters sewn into the lining of my travelling chest, the Duchess says in a lowered voice. My brother sends his assurances that Austria remains committed to the alliance, despite pressures from Prussia. You maintain your position of perfect stillness, eyes downcast, while absorbing this exchange. Such information, evidence of private, diplomatic channels between the Queen and her Austrian homeland, could be worth a fortune to the right people. Yet the trust placed in servants of your station is not misplaced. Your loyalty is to the palace and its hierarchies, not to outside interests that might seek to exploit such knowledge. The princess stays for nearly an hour, the conversation moving between matters of state and lighter court gossip. You are called upon occasionally to serve refreshments or adjust the fire, moving through these tasks with practiced invisibility before returning to your station against the wall. When the princess finally takes her leave, promising to return with the Queen's carriage before the evening's card party, the Duchess allows herself a moment of visible exhaustion. Her shoulders drop slightly. Her face relaxes from its permanent smile. These unguarded moments reveal the tremendous energy required to maintain one's position in the complex society of Versailles. You, she says suddenly, addressing you directly, for the first time. What is your name? Surprised at being acknowledged, you step forward with a bow. Jean-Marie, Your Grace, you respond, giving your simple name. The Duchess studies you for a moment. How long have you served at Versailles? 8 years, Your Grace, you answer, keeping your eyes respectfully lowered. She nods slowly. You will attend me personally during my stay. I prefer consistency in my household. With that pronouncement, she turns away, effectively dismissing you from her awareness once more. This unexpected promotion, from general chamber attendant to personal servant of a visiting dignitary, will mean additional responsibilities, but also greater access to the inner workings of court life. You bow deeply in acceptance, though she has already turned away. The Duchess retires to her bedroom for the afternoon, rest that is customary among the nobility. While she sleeps, you busy yourself with preparing her wardrobe for the evening's activities. Her personal maid will handle the intimate garments and jewelry, but you are responsible for ensuring that her outer garments are properly pressed and arranged. The gown selected for the Queen's card party is a masterpiece of dressmaking, crimson silk overlaid with gold embroidery, the tight bodice giving way to voluminous skirts that will require assistance to navigate through doorways. You carefully check each seam and fold, using a soft brush to remove any speck of dust that might have settled during the journey from Vienna. As you work, a soft knock at the service door reveals a palace page, barely 10 years old, with a sealed note. From Her Majesty's secretary, he whispers, handing you the folded paper sealed with plain wax rather than the official royal signet, a sign that this communication is personal rather than state business. You accept the note with a nod, placing it on the silver tray reserved for the Duchess's correspondence. The page disappears back into the service corridor, his soft footsteps fading quickly. Such messages flow constantly through the palace, carried by an army of young pages and footmen whose knowledge of the building's labyrinthine layout makes them invaluable couriers. When the Duchess emerges from her rest, her lady-in-waiting helps her to dress for the evening ahead. You assist where needed, holding items, fastening difficult closures, ensuring that every element of her appearance meets the exacting standards of Versailles. The transformation is remarkable. Fatigue replaced by regal bearing, every hair in perfect arrangement, jewels catching the candlelight with each movement. As the appointed hour approaches, you are sent to watch for the Queen's carriage. Standing at the window overlooking the courtyard, you see the royal conveyance arrive. Not the grand state coach used for public appearances, but a smaller, more elegant carriage used for moving within the palace grounds. 4 white horses stamp impatiently while footmen in royal livery stand at attention beside the doors. You hurry back to inform the Duchess, who makes a final inspection of her appearance before proceeding to the antechamber. As she prepares to depart, she turns to you with unexpected instructions. You will accompany me to Her Majesty's apartments and wait in the outer chamber. I may have need of you during the evening. This is an extraordinary development. Servants rarely accompany their masters into the Queen's private spaces unless they are part of the royal household itself. To be permitted to wait in the antechamber to the Queen's rooms is an unusual privilege that speaks to the Duchess's particular status. You follow several paces behind as the Duchess descends the grand staircase to the waiting carriage. Though the distance to the Queen's apartments could easily be walked, etiquette demands that a visitor of the Duchess's rank be conveyed by carriage, even for short distances within the palace grounds. The brief journey takes you along illuminated pathways where fountains play even in darkness, their waters catching the light from hundreds of lanterns. The palace at night is transformed, shadows softening its grandeur, candlelight warming the cold marble and stone. Courtiers stroll along the paths or gather in small groups, their jewels glinting like stars against the dark fabric of evening attire. The carriage arrives at the private entrance to the Queen's apartments. Footmen rush to assist the Duchess as she descends, while you follow discreetly, maintaining the proper distance. The royal guards recognize the Duchess immediately, bowing as they open the doors to admit her to the sequence of increasingly intimate rooms that lead to the Queen's private chambers. You are directed to wait in the outermost antechamber, a space still opulent by ordinary standards but considered merely functional in the progression of royal rooms. Other servants wait here as well, attendants to the various nobles who have been granted the privilege of the Queen's company this evening. From your position, you can hear distant music and occasional laughter from the inner chambers. The Queen's apartments are famous for their more relaxed atmosphere, a contrast to the rigid formality maintained in the King's wing of the palace. Here, Marie Antoinette has created a haven where court etiquette is somewhat relaxed, allowing for more genuine human connection among her favored circle. Hours pass as you wait, maintaining your posture of alertness despite growing fatigue. The conversations around you, whispered exchanges between other waiting servants, provide insights into the current concerns of the court. There are worries about the harvest in the provinces, rumors of unrest in Paris, speculation about ministerial appointments that might affect the fortunes of various noble houses. Shortly before midnight, a lady-in-waiting emerges from the inner chambers looking distressed. "Is the Austrian Duchess's servant here?" she calls, scanning the antechamber. You step forward immediately, bowing in acknowledgement. "Your mistress requires assistance," she informs you, already turning to lead you inward. She has taken ill, suddenly, and wishes to return to her apartments. You follow the lady through rooms of increasing splendor, each more richly decorated than the last. The innermost chamber, the Queen's card room, is a vision of elegance. Crystal chandeliers illuminate a space where a dozen of the highest-ranking women at court sit at small tables covered in green baize, cards and coins scattered before them. The Queen herself sits at the central table, immediately recognizable, even without the formal regalia of state occasions. In this private setting, she appears younger, more animated than in her public appearances. She looks up with concern as you enter, gesturing toward a side door where your Duchess has apparently retreated. You find your mistress seated in a small adjoining boudoir, her face pale despite its coating of white powder and rouge. "Ah, there, you are," she says weakly. "I find I must withdraw. The heat of the room, perhaps, or something in the evening refreshments." You offer your arm for support, which she accepts with uncharacteristic gratitude. As you help her to her feet, she leans close to whisper, "Not a word of this to anyone. I am simply tired from travel, nothing more." You nod in understanding. Illness at court can quickly become the subject of damaging gossip, and showing weakness in this environment of constant evaluation can have political consequences. The Queen herself appears at the doorway, concern evident in her expression. "My dear friend," she says to the Duchess, "are you quite well? Shall I send my physician to attend you?" The Duchess straightens visibly in the presence of royalty, summoning her strength. "Your Majesty is too kind," she replies, with a credible smile. "It is merely fatigue from the journey. A night's rest will restore me completely." Marie Antoinette steps closer, taking the Duchess's hand in a gesture of genuine affection. "Then you must not delay. My carriage will return you to your apartments." She lowers her voice, adding, "We shall continue our conversation tomorrow, when you are refreshed." With royal permission granted, you guide your mistress through the Queen's apartments toward the exit. Courtiers part before you, curiosity in their eyes, but decorum preventing open questions. Once outside in the cool night air, the Duchess seems to breathe more easily, some colour returning to her cheeks. The Queen's carriage conveys you swiftly back to the North Wing. During the brief journey, the Duchess remains silent, her eyes closed as though gathering strength. Only when you reach her chambers does she speak again, instructing you to send for her personal physician who travels with her entourage. "And then prepare my writing desk," she adds, as her lady-in-waiting helps her to a chaise longue. "I must compose several letters before retiring." You move efficiently through these tasks, first dispatching a messenger to locate the physician, then arranging the writing desk with paper, ink, sealing wax, and candles. As you work, you observe the Duchess carefully, noting how her illness seems to have passed as quickly as it came. She speaks in low tones with her lady-in-waiting, their conversation too quiet to overhear, but their manner suggesting matters more serious than mere physical discomfort. When the physician arrives, an elderly gentleman with the dignified bearing of one who has attended noble families for generations, you are dismissed to the antechamber. Still, through the partially open door, you catch fragments of the consultation. The doctor asks about symptoms, examines the Duchess's pulse and eyes, and ultimately pronounces that she has suffered nothing more than a spell of faintness brought on by the warmth and excitement of the evening. Once the physician departs, you are summoned to assist as the Duchess prepares for bed. Her recovery appears complete, her movements energetic as she dictates notes to her secretary, instructions to be delivered to various contacts at court the following day. You help remove her elaborate gown, carefully storing it for the ladies, made to examine in the morning for any needed repairs. Before dismissing you for the night, the Duchess fixes you with a penetrating gaze. "You conducted yourself well this evening," she observes. "The Queen noticed your discretion." This simple acknowledgement that the Queen herself had registered your existence, however fleetingly, sends a wave of pride through you that no amount of wages could equal. "Tomorrow will be demanding," the Duchess continues. "The King holds council in the morning, and I am invited to attend the Queen during the afternoon promenade. You will need to coordinate with Her Majesty's household to ensure proper arrangements. When the Duchess emerges from her rest, her lady-in-waiting helps her to dress for the evening ahead. You assist where needed, holding items, fastening difficult closures, ensuring that every element of her appearance meets the exacting standards of Versailles. The transformation is remarkable. Fatigue replaced by regal bearing, every hair in perfect arrangement, jewels catching the candlelight with each movement. As the appointed hour approaches, you are sent to watch for the Queen's carriage. Standing at the window overlooking the courtyard, you see the royal conveyance arrive. Not the grand state coach used for public appearances, but a smaller, more elegant carriage used for moving within the palace grounds. 4 white horses stamp impatiently while footmen in royal livery stand at attention beside the doors. You hurry back to inform the Duchess, who makes a final inspection of her appearance before proceeding to the antechamber. As she prepares to depart, she turns to you with unexpected instructions. You will accompany me to Her Majesty's apartments and wait in the outer chamber. I may have need of you during the evening. This is an extraordinary development. Servants rarely accompany their masters into the Queen's private spaces unless they are part of the royal household itself. To be permitted to wait in the antechamber to the Queen's rooms is an unusual privilege that speaks to the Duchess's particular status. You follow several paces behind as the Duchess descends the grand staircase to the waiting carriage. Though the distance to the Queen's apartments could easily be walked, etiquette demands that a visitor of the Duchess's rank be conveyed by carriage even for short distances within the palace grounds. The brief journey takes you along illuminated pathways where fountains play even in darkness, their waters catching the light from hundreds of lanterns. The palace at night is transformed, shadows softening its grandeur, candlelight warming the cold marble and stone. Courtiers stroll along the paths or gather in small groups, their jewels glinting like stars against the dark fabric of evening attire. The carriage arrives at the private entrance to the Queen's apartments. Footmen rush to assist the Duchess. As she descends, while you follow discreetly, maintaining the proper distance, the royal guards recognize the Duchess immediately, bowing as they open the doors to admit her to the sequence of increasingly intimate rooms that lead to the Queen's private chambers. You are directed to wait in the outermost antechamber, a space still opulent by ordinary standards but considered merely functional in the progression of royal rooms. Other servants wait here as well, attendants to the various nobles who have been granted the privilege of the Queen's company this evening. From your position, you can hear distant music and occasional laughter from the inner chambers. The Queen's apartments are famous for their more relaxed atmosphere, a contrast to the rigid formality maintained in the King's wing of the palace. Here, Marie Antoinette has created a haven where court etiquette is somewhat relaxed, allowing for more genuine human connection among her favored circle. Hours pass as you wait, maintaining your posture of alertness despite growing fatigue. The conversations around you, whispered exchanges between other waiting servants, provide insights into the current concerns of the court. There are worries about the harvest in the provinces, rumors of unrest in Paris, speculation about ministerial appointments that might affect the fortunes of various noble houses. Shortly before midnight, a lady-in-waiting emerges from the inner chambers looking distressed. "Is the Austrian Duchess's servant here?" she calls, scanning the antechamber. You step forward immediately, bowing in acknowledgement. "Your mistress requires assistance," she informs you, already turning to lead you inward. She has taken ill, suddenly, and wishes to return to her apartments. You follow the lady through rooms of increasing splendor, each more richly decorated than the last. The innermost chamber, the Queen's card room, is a vision of elegance. Crystal chandeliers illuminate a space where a dozen of the highest-ranking women at court sit at small tables covered in green baize, cards and coins scattered before them. The Queen herself sits at the central table, immediately recognizable, even without the formal regalia of state occasions. In this private setting, she appears younger, more animated than in her public appearances. She looks up with concern as you enter, gesturing toward a side door where your Duchess has apparently retreated. You find your mistress seated in a small adjoining boudoir, her face pale despite its coating of white powder and rouge. "Ah, there, you are," she says weakly. "I find I must withdraw. The heat of the room, perhaps, or something in the evening refreshments." You offer your arm for support, which she accepts with uncharacteristic gratitude. As you help her to her feet, she leans close to whisper, "Not a word of this to anyone. I am simply tired from travel, nothing more." You nod in understanding. Illness at court can quickly become the subject of damaging gossip, and showing weakness in this environment of constant evaluation can have political consequences. The Queen herself appears at the doorway, concern evident in her expression. "My dear friend," she says to the Duchess, "are you quite well? Shall I send my physician to attend you?" The Duchess straightens visibly in the presence of royalty, summoning her strength. "Your Majesty is too kind," she replies, with a credible smile. "It is merely fatigue from the journey. A night's rest will restore me completely." Marie Antoinette steps closer, taking the Duchess's hand in a gesture of genuine affection. "Then you must not delay. My carriage will return you to your apartments." She lowers her voice, adding, "We shall continue our conversation tomorrow, when you are refreshed." With royal permission granted, you guide your mistress through the Queen's apartments toward the exit. Courtiers part before you, curiosity in their eyes, but decorum preventing open questions. Once outside in the cool night air, the Duchess seems to breathe more easily, some colour returning to her cheeks. The Queen's carriage conveys you swiftly back to the North Wing. During the brief journey, the Duchess remains silent, her eyes closed as though gathering strength. Only when you reach her chambers does she speak again, instructing you to send for her personal physician who travels with her entourage. "And then prepare my writing desk," she adds, as her lady-in-waiting helps her to a chaise longue. "I must compose several letters before retiring." You move efficiently through these tasks, first dispatching a messenger to locate the physician, then arranging the writing desk with paper, ink, sealing wax, and candles. As you work, you observe the Duchess carefully, noting how her illness seems to have passed as quickly as it came. She speaks in low tones with her lady-in-waiting, their conversation too quiet to overhear, but their manner suggesting matters more serious than mere physical discomfort. When the physician arrives, an elderly gentleman with the dignified bearing of one who has attended noble families for generations, you are dismissed to the antechamber. Still, through the partially open door, you catch fragments of the consultation. The doctor asks about symptoms, examines the Duchess's pulse and eyes, and ultimately pronounces that she has suffered nothing more than a spell of faintness brought on by the warmth and excitement of the evening. Once the physician departs, you are summoned to assist as the Duchess prepares for bed. Her recovery appears complete, her movements energetic as she dictates notes to her secretary, instructions to be delivered to various contacts at court the following day. You help remove her elaborate gown, carefully storing it for the ladies, made to examine in the morning for any needed repairs. Before dismissing you for the night, the Duchess fixes you with a penetrating gaze, You conducted yourself well this evening, she observes. The Queen noticed your discretion. This simple acknowledgement that the Queen herself had registered your existence, however fleetingly, sends a wave of pride through you that no amount of wages could equal. Tomorrow will be demanding, the Duchess continues. The King holds council in the morning, and I am invited to attend the Queen during the afternoon promenade. You will need to coordinate with Her Majesty's household to ensure proper arrangements. As night falls, you help light hundreds of candles throughout the newly transformed chambers. The spring light lingers longer now, but Versailles, after dark, remains a realm of carefully orchestrated illumination. Crystal chandeliers throw prismatic patterns across freshly uncovered parquet floors, while mirrored sconces multiply the light to create an atmosphere of ethereal brightness. You retire late, your body aching from the physical demands of the seasonal transition, yet satisfied with the day's accomplishments. Through your small window, you can see stars appearing above the darkened gardens. The air smells of turned earth, new growth, and the distant scent of orange blossoms from the orangerie. Spring has truly arrived at Versailles. The following weeks bring constant activity as the palace fully embraces the season. Daily life takes on new patterns and rhythms. Morning begins with the windows being opened throughout the state apartments to admit fresh air, a simple act that would have been unthinkable during the bitter cold of winter. You are often assigned to this task, moving methodically through chambers where marble floors still hold the night's coolness beneath your feet. The King's routine changes with the season as well. An avid huntsman, Louis XVI now rides out more, frequently into the forests surrounding Versailles. On hunting mornings, the courtyard buzzes with activity before dawn. Grooms preparing horses, huntsmen checking equipment, servants packing refreshments that will be transported to designated points along the planned route. Though you don't participate directly in these expeditions, their preparation affects the entire household rhythm. When the King hunts, the court schedule adjusts accordingly. Meals are served at different hours, audiences postponed or rescheduled, evening entertainments planned to accommodate his return. As a servant responsible for maintaining certain state rooms, you find your duties shifted to accommodate these changes, cleaning earlier or later than usual, preparing spaces for alternative uses, adapting to the royal whim with the flexibility expected of all palace staff. The Queen's springtime activities centre more on the gardens. Marie Antoinette is known for her love of the outdoors, especially her private domain at the Petit Trianon, where she can escape the rigid etiquette of the main palace. On pleasant mornings, you sometimes glimpse her walking with her closest ladies, dressed in the simpler styles she prefers when away from formal court functions. These sightings are brief. Your work rarely takes you to her private retreats, but they offer fleeting impressions of a more human aspect of royalty than is visible during state ceremonies. Spring at Versailles brings visitors in increasing numbers. Foreign ambassadors arrive to present credentials or negotiate treaties. Provincial nobles journey to court seeking favors or appointments, and curious travelers from across Europe come to glimpse the legendary palace. Each category of visitor requires specific preparations and protocols. For diplomatic receptions, you help prepare the formal audience chambers, ensuring that every element reflects the precise degree of honor France wishes to accord the visiting. Dignity. The height of the chair provided, the number of candles lit, the specific carpets displayed, all communicate subtle messages about status and relationship. You've learned these complex signals through years of observation, though the reasons behind them are rarely explained to servants. Provincial nobles often arrive with extensive households, requiring accommodation within the already crowded palace. You might be temporarily reassigned to prepare guest chambers, working alongside the visitor's own servants who often regard palace staff with a mixture of awe and competitiveness. These interactions provide rare opportunities to hear news from distant parts of France, reports of local conditions, regional concerns, or provincial fashions that occasionally influence court styles. The casual visitors, wealthy merchants, foreign gentry, or artists granted special access view the palace primarily when the court is engaged elsewhere. You sometimes encounter them being led through staterooms by designated guides, staring open-mouthed at the opulence that forms your everyday working environment. Their presence requires extra vigilance regarding smaller valuable objects that might disappear into pockets or purses during these tours. As spring advances towards summer, the gardens become the center of court life. The famous fountains operate. With increasing frequency, their maintenance becoming a daily concern rather than the occasional displays of winter. You are sometimes assigned to assist the fountain attendants, who must rush from mechanism to mechanism during displays, ensuring water flows properly to each sculptural group in sequence. These fountain duties offer rare opportunities to work outdoors, a welcome change from the perpetual interior tasks that occupy most servants. The garden air, fragrant with blossoming trees and flowers, feels like a luxury after months confined within stone walls. Though the work is physically demanding, running between fountains, manipulating heavy valves, clearing blockages that interrupt water flow, the chance to feel sunlight and breathe freely compensates for the exertion. Court entertainments evolve with the warming weather. The intimate indoor concerts and card parties of winter give way to garden promenades, outdoor theatrical performances, and eventually the grand summer balls that utilize both interior and exterior spaces. Each event requires elaborate preparation from an army of servants working in coordinated precision. For an evening garden reception, you might spend days helping to arrange hundreds of additional torches and lanterns along pathways, secure temporary platforms for musicians among the hedges, or set up refreshment tables beside particularly admired fountains or statuary. The effect, when complete, transforms the formal landscape into a dreamlike setting where courtiers can wander between illuminated groves and moonlit water features. The first major ball of the season approaches with the fullness of spring. Preparations begin a week in advance, with every department of the household working at maximum capacity. You are assigned to the team responsible for transforming the Hercules Salon into the primary dancing space, a task requiring both delicacy and strength. Priceless. Carpets must be carefully rolled and removed, exposing the polished wooden floor beneath. The enormous chandelier, containing hundreds of crystal drops, must be lowered on its mechanical winch for cleaning and the replacement of candles. Side tables and seating must be arranged according to the precise plan developed by the master of ceremonies, with careful attention to the hierarchies of rank that determine who may sit where. The day of the ball brings controlled chaos throughout the palace. Extra servants are summoned from Paris to supplement the permanent staff. The kitchens work at a frantic pace, preparing elaborate displays that are as much artistic creations as nourishment. Musicians arrive to tune instruments and rehearse the selected pieces. Florists transform interior spaces with extravagant arrangements that echo the garden's peak bloom. Your role this evening is to serve in the refreshment rooms adjacent to the main ballroom. Dressed in your finest livery, you stand behind a table laden with crystal glasses and silver pitchers containing various wines and cordials. You must maintain perfect posture for hours, anticipating needs without being asked, refilling glasses with the appropriate beverage for each guest based on their rank and known preferences. The nobility arrives in waves of silk, jewels, and powdered, Perfection. The women's gowns have expanded to their spring dimensions, slightly less voluminous than winter styles, but still requiring doorways to be navigated sideways. Their hair rises in elaborate constructions adorned with flowers, feathers, and jeweled ornaments that tremble with each movement. The men are no less splendid in embroidered coats, their sword hilts flashing with gems as they bow and turn. From your station, you observe the complex social dance that is as precisely choreographed as the minuets and gavottes performed in the ballroom. Courtiers navigate invisible lines of alliance and animosity, calculating each conversation for its potential benefit. Fans flutter encoded messages between ladies, while gentlemen exchange significant glances over celebrated shoulders. Politics, romance, and rivalry intertwine in the perfumed air. The king and queen make their entrance at the appointed hour, their arrival signaled by a flourish of trumpets. All conversation ceases. All heads bow in the profound silence that acknowledges sovereignty. You glimpse them only briefly as they pass. The king solid and somewhat awkward in his magnificence, the queen ethereal in spring green silk embroidered with silver blossoms that match the real flowers woven into her towering hair. Throughout the evening, you maintain your position of attentive invisibility, serving when needed, observing constantly, speaking only when addressed directly with requests. Noble arms reach past you for glasses. Conversations flow around you as though you were merely another piece of furniture, yet you absorb everything. Who speaks with whom? Which factions seem ascendant? Whose star appears to be falling at court? This information has value in the servants' world, where awareness of shifting power dynamics helps anticipate changes in household organization. When a minister falls from favor, his entire staff may find themselves suddenly without position. When a new favorite rises, opportunities may open for those who serve them well. The ballroom conversations you overhear tonight might influence your own future in ways impossible to predict. The spring ball continues until dawn, courtiers gradually departing as fatigue overcomes even the most determined socializers. Only when the last guest has been handed into their carriage can you begin the enormous task of restoration, returning the palace to its daytime configuration before the morning audiences begin. You work through what remains of the night alongside dozens of equally exhausted servants. Candle wax must be scraped from floors and furniture, broken glass collected, food remnants removed before they attract vermin. The physical toll is immense after hours of standing followed by intense labor, but the work must be completed regardless of your exhaustion. When you finally return to your quarters as the sun rises on a new spring day, sleep comes instantly, despite the discomfort of your narrow bed. Your dreams are occasionally infiltrated by echoes of the night's music or flashes of candlelight on jewels, but physical fatigue quickly pulls you into deeper unconsciousness. The transition from spring to summer happens almost imperceptibly, marked more by changes in palace routine than by dramatic shifts in weather. Days gradually lengthen until the evening meal for servants is taken in full daylight. The king extends his hunting expeditions, sometimes remaining away overnight at smaller lodges scattered throughout the royal forests. Heat becomes an increasing concern within the palace walls. Stone and marble that provided welcome coolness in spring now radiate accumulated warmth, making certain chambers uncomfortable by afternoon. Your duties expand to include positioning screens to block direct sunlight from valuable furnishings, and arranging for additional water to be available in every room. The gardens require constant attention as summer advances. You sometimes assist the gardeners with watering duties in the early morning or late evening, carrying buckets to particularly valuable specimens that require individual care beyond the capacity of the fountain system. The formal parterres must maintain perfect appearance despite increasing heat, which means endless weeding, trimming, and replacement of plants that fail to thrive. Court life adapts to the season. Formal activities begin earlier to avoid the heat of midday. The Queen often retreats to her private domain at Petit Trianon, where she can escape both the physical discomfort of the main palace and the relentless scrutiny of court etiquette. The King occasionally joins her there for intimate family suppers, but more often remains at Versailles, attending to state business in the marginally cooler morning hours. Midsummer brings one of the year's most significant events, the celebration of the Feast of St. Louis, the King's namesake day. Preparations begin weeks in advance, with every department of the household contributing to what will be both a religious observance and a spectacular display of royal magnificence. You are assigned to help prepare the royal chapel, where the day will begin with a special mass attended by the entire court. The marble floors must be polished to mirror brightness, the gilt decorations cleaned until they gleam like new, and special tapestries installed to honor the occasion. Working alongside the chapel staff, a separate hierarchy within the palace structure, you learn the particular protocols that govern this sacred space within the secular world of the court. The chapel's preparation complete, your attention turns to the gardens where the evening festivities will take place. Temporary structures rise among the formal plantings, platforms for musicians, serving stations for refreshments, even small stages where theatrical performances will entertain the guests between musical selections. As a trusted servant with high experience in similar events, you are given responsibility for overseeing final arrangements in one section of the garden. Under your direction, junior staff position benches according to the master plan, arrange decorative urns filled with fresh flowers, and secure hundreds of glass lanterns that will illuminate the pathways after sunset. The day itself dawns clear and hot, promising perfect conditions for the outdoor celebration. Your duties begin before sunrise, making final inspections of your assigned area, replacing any flowers that have wilted overnight, ensuring that every element is precisely as planned. By mid-morning, you change into formal livery to serve during the reception that follows the chapel service. Positioned in the Hall of Mirrors, you are part of the elaborate human machinery that keeps refreshments flowing, maintains perfect order, and anticipates every need of the assembled nobility. The heat grows oppressive as midday approaches. Ladies discreetly blot perspiration with handkerchiefs while continuing animated conversations. Gentlemen in heavy embroidered coats show increasing discomfort despite court etiquette that prohibits any acknowledgement of physical distress. Servants suffer most of all, forbidden to show any reaction to the temperature while maintaining constant movement and perfect composure. Relief comes with the traditional afternoon pause, when the court withdraws for a few hours of rest before the evening celebrations. You use this time to change your sweat-soaked clothing and consume a quick meal in the servants' hall, where the conversation centers entirely on preparations for the night ahead. As the heat of the day begins to subside, you return to your station in the gardens. The King's feast day concludes with the most spectacular display of the year, a grand fireworks exhibition over the Grand Canal, preceded by illumination of the entire garden. Your role is to light a specific section of lanterns at precisely the right moment, creating a sequential illumination that will appear magical to the observing courtiers. Dusk approaches with agonizing slowness. The court assembles on the terraces overlooking the gardens, ladies now in evening dress that glimmers with embroidery, and jewels designed to catch the last natural light and the coming artificial illumination. The king and queen appear on the central balcony to appreciative murmurs from the assembled courtiers. At the signal, a single trumpet note, you begin lighting your section of lanterns. Working with practiced speed, you move from one to the next, creating a pathway of light that connects with those being lit by other servants to gradually reveal the entire garden design in glowing outline. The effect, when complete, draws audible gasps from the watching nobility. The formal gardens, magnificent by day, are transformed into a fantasy landscape of light and shadow. Fountains play in illuminated splendor, their water catching the light to create cascades of liquid brilliance. Statues seem to come alive in the flickering glow, their marble forms more dramatic against the darkness. Music begins from invisible orchestras positioned throughout the gardens. The court descends the steps to promenade along the illuminated pathways, experiencing the familiar landscape transformed by nightfall and artful lighting. You stand at attention near your section of lights, ready to relight any that may falter or to assist guests who might require direction. The evening reaches its crescendo with the fireworks display over the Grand Canal. As the first rockets soar upward to burst in showers of colored light, you permit yourself a moment of genuine appreciation for the spectacle. Despite the exhaustion of the day's labor, despite the knowledge that hours of cleanup await once the celebration concludes, there is undeniable beauty in this moment. The culmination of countless hours of planning and preparation by hundreds of skilled hands. Summer continues its slow progression toward autumn. The intense heat gradually modifies, though the stone walls of the palace now hold warmth even through cooler nights. The gardens show subtle signs of the approaching change, certain flowers fading while others reach their peak, leaves beginning to lose their fresh spring color, shadows lengthening incrementally each day. Court life follows its own seasonal rhythm. Many nobles depart for their country estates during the hottest weeks, reducing the daily demands on the palace staff. The king continues his regular routine of councils and hunts, but formal receptions become less frequent. The queen divides her time between Petit Trianon and occasional visits to Paris, her household staff adjusting constantly to these movements. Your duties shift with the season as well. Late summer brings the annual inventory of palace furnishings, a high, monumental task involving every department. Each item belonging to the crown must be accounted for, from the grandest state bed to the smallest silver spoon. You assist the senior household officers responsible for your department, helping to check items against meticulous lists maintained since the previous year. The inventory provides rare access to spaces normally beyond your assigned areas. You help count candelabra in state bedchambers, verify tapestries in storage, and confirm the presence of furniture in rarely used reception rooms. The process offers glimpses into the full extent of royal wealth, thousands of objects of incalculable value distributed throughout the enormous palace. With autumn's approach, preparation begins for the seasonal transition. Lighter summer furnishings will soon be replaced with warmer materials. Garden statuary must be protected against coming frosts. The orangerie staff prepares for the enormous task of moving hundreds of tender trees and plants into winter shelter. You are assigned to assist with preparing fireplaces for the cold months ahead. Each of the hundreds of hearths throughout the palace must be cleaned, checked for structural issues, and tested to ensure proper drawing before regular use resumes. This sooty work is physically demanding but critical. A smoking chimney can damage priceless furnishings and artwork, while an improperly maintained fireplace presents dangers of fire or deadly fumes. as you work systematically through your assigned chambers. The palace begins its subtle transformation toward winter mode. Heavy curtains reappear at windows. Rugs return to marble floors that will soon be uncomfortably cold, and the winter tapestries emerge from storage to resume their places on walls that will need insulation against drafts. The court returns to full attendance with the autumn hunting season. Nobles who retreated to country properties during summer heat now converge again on Versailles, eager to re-establish their positions in the complex hierarchy of royal favour. Their arrival increases demands on the household staff, with more chambers to maintain, more meals to serve, more entertainment to arrange. The gardens undergo their own transformation. Summer blooms fade, replaced by the more subdued colours of autumn flowering species. Gardeners work constantly to keep falling leaves from marring the precise designs of the formal parterres. The famous fountains operate less frequently now, preparations already underway to protect the hydraulic systems from winter freezing. Your daily routine includes more indoor tasks as outdoor activities diminish. Windows that remained open through summer are now closed by mid-afternoon as evening chill arrives earlier each day. Candles are lit sooner, their consumption increasing steadily as natural light diminishes. The scent of beeswax becomes more pronounced throughout the palace as hundreds of additional candles burn daily. The first true cold snap arrives suddenly, an overnight frost that leaves the garden silver-coated at dawn. The pace of winter preparation intensifies immediately. You join the teams bringing in smaller statuary from the gardens, carefully wrapping marble figures in protective coverings before they are transported to storage rooms where they will remain until spring returns. Inside, the first fires of the season are lit in the main reception rooms. The smell of wood smoke mingles with beeswax and perfume to create the distinctive winter atmosphere of Versailles. Courtiers gather closer to hearths during conversations, their colourful clothing forming shifting patterns against the darkening afternoons. Winter arrives with ceremony, the official moving of the court to winter apartments. Certain chambers, used primarily in summer, are closed entirely, their furnishings covered, their doors sealed until spring. The king and queen relocate to rooms with better heating and less exposure to cold outer walls. This movement requires massive coordination among the household staff, with every personal possession carefully transferred according to precise instructions. Your winter duties differ significantly from those of warmer months. Much of your time is now devoted to maintaining fires, carrying wood to keep designated hearths burning continuously throughout day and night. The physical labor helps combat the perpetual cold of the stone palace, though your hands chap and crack from constant exposure to winter air. Outdoor work becomes an exercise in endurance. When assigned to clear snow from the main courtyard, or assist the reduced gardening staff with winter protection measures, you layer whatever personal garments you possess beneath your uniform. The cold is democratic, affecting nobles and servants alike, though the former have far better means of protection through furs, multiple layers of silk, and the luxury of remaining indoors during the worst weather. Winter entertainments center around interior spaces. Elaborate dinners replace garden promenades. Concerts in the royal chapel substitute for outdoor musical performances, and card games occupy hours formerly spent strolling illuminated pathways. The preparation and maintenance of these indoor activities falls to servants who must maintain perfect service despite the challenges of the season. The Winter Palace operates at a different rhythm, more concentrated, more intimate, more focused on basic comfort alongside ceremonial obligations. Meals become heavier, featuring game from the royal forests and preserved fruits from the palace orchards. Wine flows more liberally as a defense against the cold, making evening service more challenging as nobility grow louder and less predictable under its influence. Christmas brings its own traditions to Versailles, though celebrated with less domestic intimacy than in humble homes. The royal family attends midnight mass in the chapel, preceded by a formal supper and followed by exchange of expensive gifts among the highest nobility. For servants, the holiday means additional work rather than celebration, though kitchen staff ensure that the servants' hall receives special treats and wine allowances are temporarily increased. You spend Christmas Eve assigned to the royal chapel, assisting with preparations for the midnight service. Hundreds of additional candles must be positioned and lit, creating a blaze of light that will illuminate the sacred space for the most important religious observance of the season. Special music has been rehearsed for weeks, and the chapel's decoration represents the combined efforts of dozens of specialized servants. The result, when complete, transforms the already magnificent space into a vision of celestial splendor. Light reflects from gold surfaces and polished marble, creating an atmosphere of otherworldly brilliance. As the court assembles for the service, the ladies now in subdued colors appropriate to religious observance, gentlemen in formal black, relieved only by diamond buttons or orders of chivalry. You stand discreetly near a side altar, ready to relight any candles that may falter during the lengthy ceremony. The music begins, voices of the royal choir rising in ancient Latin texts that speak of hope and light in darkest winter. Despite your exhaustion, despite the discomfort of standing motionless for hours in formal livery, something of the moment's beauty reaches beyond professional detachment. In this rare convergence of sensory splendor and spiritual significance, the divisions between servant and noble seem momentarily less profound. Winter deepens after the Christmas celebration, January bringing the coldest days and longest nights. The palace routine adjusts to these extremes. Morning activities starting later to avoid the worst pre-dawn chill. Evening gatherings beginning earlier to maximize the benefit of fires already burning for hours. Your existence narrows to a circuit between assigned duties and the marginal warmth of the servants' quarters. On the coldest nights, you sleep fully clothed, sharing blankets with fellow servants for additional warmth. The small luxuries of servant life, occasional leftovers from noble tables, rare moments of leisure in the gardens, brief glimpses of spectacular entertainment diminish to their winter minimum. Yet even in these darkest days, preparations for the next seasonal cycle have already begun. In palace offices, plans are being drafted for spring plantings, summer entertainments, autumn harvests. The wheel of the year continues its inexorable turning, carrying palace life through its eternal cycle of renewal and retreat, splendor and simplicity, each season bringing its particular beauty and burden to those who serve within these historic walls. Despite hardships, there is comfort in this cyclical certainty. As a servant of Versailles, your life moves in harmony with patterns established generations before your birth and continuing long after you are gone. The palace endures through all seasons, its rhythms determined by forces beyond any individual, the turning earth, the changing light, the eternal dance of sun and moon that governs life within these gilded walls, just as surely as it does in the humblest farmhouse in distant provinces. As the seasons flow in their eternal cycle at Versailles, certain days stand apart, moments when the grandeur of the palace reaches its zenith for spectacular celebrations. Your dreams now carry you to one such extraordinary day, when every servant plays a vital role in creating magnificence that will be remembered for generations. You wake before dawn on this most significant day, though in truth you have barely slept. The air in the servants' quarters vibrates with nervous energy. Today, the palace will host a celebration of unprecedented magnificence, and every hand is required for preparations. For weeks, the household has been consumed with planning for this diplomatic reception and ball honoring, visiting royalty from Spain, a dynastic connection requiring display of the full splendor of Versailles. Your eyes adjust to the darkness as you rise silently, careful not to disturb the other servants who will be waking soon enough. Through the small window, the stars still shine clearly in the night sky, though a faint lightening along the eastern horizon promises dawn within. The hour, you dress with practiced efficiency, knowing that today's labors will be among the most demanding you have faced in your years of service. The servants' hall is already active despite the early hour. Kitchen staff have been working through the night, beginning preparations for the elaborate meals that will be served throughout the day. The head chef, a man whose temperament is as legendary as his culinary creations, barks orders to his army of assistants as they transform raw ingredients into edible art. The heat from massive ovens and roasting spits makes the kitchen uncomfortably warm even in these pre-dawn hours. You collect a simple breakfast, bread and broth, before reporting to the master of household for your assignments. Today, the normal domestic hierarchy has been temporarily reorganized to accommodate the special requirements of the celebration. Regular duties are suspended as every servant is directed toward the monumental task of preparing the palace for thousands of guests, including foreign dignitaries, French nobility, diplomatic corps, and royal families. Your first task takes you to the Hall of Mirrors, where final preparations are underway for what will be the centerpiece of the day's events. The famous gallery, running almost 80 meters along the garden facade of the palace, must be transformed into the most spectacular ballroom in Europe before evening falls. Despite its enormous size, the hall will barely accommodate the hundreds of guests expected to attend. Working with a team of fellow servants under the direction of the Master of Ceremonies, you help position additional gilded torchères along the walls between the 17 massive windows that face the gardens. Each torchère will hold multiple candles, contributing to the thousands of flames that will illuminate the hall after sunset. The placement must be precise, allowing sufficient light while not impeding the movement of guests or creating fire hazards near the ladies' enormous skirts. The mirrors themselves require special attention. Running along the wall opposite the windows, these 357 beveled mirrors are the defining feature of the space, designed to reflect both natural daylight and candlelight to magical effect. You assist the specialists responsible for their care, holding cloths and solutions as they meticulously clean each panel until it gleams with perfect clarity. As you work, sunlight gradually fills the hall, pouring through the tall windows to create patterns on the polished marble floor. The effect offers a preview of the evening's splendor, light reflecting infinitely between mirrors and windows, multiplying chandeliers and candelabras into endless regression, transforming physical space into something that seems to extend beyond normal boundaries. By mid-morning, attention turns to the temporary structures being erected in the gardens. A celebration of this magnitude cannot be contained within the palace walls alone, no matter how grand. Viewing platforms for fireworks, open-air pavilions for refreshments, and covered walkways connecting various garden features are being constructed by teams of carpenters working since first light. You are assigned to assist with decorating one of these temporary pavilions, carrying baskets of fresh flowers from the palace conservatories and helping the royal gardeners arrange them according to elaborate plans. Every bloom has been carefully selected for color, meaning, and relationship. To the Spanish guests of honor, the language of flowers speaks its own diplomatic message, understood by the educated nobility who will recognize the symbolism in each arrangement. The physical demands of the work are considerable. Up and down stairs carrying heavy loads, kneeling, on hard surfaces to secure decorations, reaching overhead to adjust draperies, all while maintaining the appearance of effortless service that Versailles demands. Your muscles ache from exertion, your hands suffer small cuts from wires and thorns, yet complaints are unthinkable on a day when the reputation of France depends on the perfect execution of every detail. A distant fanfare announces the arrival of the Spanish entourage at the palace gates. Though the formal reception won't begin for hours, the royal guests must be properly welcomed and escorted to their apartments to rest and prepare. The sound triggers increased urgency among the servants. Time is growing short, and 1,000 details remain to be perfected. You catch only distant glimpses of the procession, flashes of gold and crimson as the Spanish carriages roll through the courtyard, surrounded by mounted guards in formal uniforms. The exact composition and ranking of the visitors has been studied intensively by palace officials for weeks, ensuring that each will receive precisely the degree of ceremony their position demands, no more and no less. By early afternoon, you are reassigned to help prepare the King's State apartments, where the initial diplomatic reception will take place. These formal rooms, the Hercules Salon, the Apollo Salon, the War Salon, represent the pinnacle of royal splendor, each designed to impress with overwhelming displays of artistic and material wealth. Here, your tasks are more delicate. Under the watchful eye of senior household officers, you help position priceless objects that have been brought from storage specifically for this occasion. Solid gold candelabras that are displayed only for the most important events. Flemish tapestries, woven with gold and silver thread that normally rest protected from light. Porcelain vases from China and Japan that must be handled with extraordinary care. The state portraits of both French and Spanish monarchs have been hung in significant locations, their placement calculated to emphasize dynastic connections while maintaining the proper precedence. Crystal chandeliers have been lowered on their mechanical winches, cleaned crystal by crystal, and raised again to catch the late afternoon sun in prismatic explosions of color. As the hour of the reception approaches, you are briefly released to change into formal livery. The garment, more elaborate than your everyday uniform, marks you as part of the visible service staff for the evening's events. The embroidered vest bearing royal insignia feels stiff and unfamiliar against your body, the powdered wig uncomfortable on your closely cropped hair. But these discomforts are trivial compared to the honor of being selected for public-facing duties during such a significant occasion. Your station for the diplomatic reception is in the Mercury Salon, where you will stand against the wall with other servants, ready to fulfill any requests from the assembled dignitaries. Before assuming your position, you receive final instructions from the Master of Ceremonies, reminders about proper forms of address for various ranks of nobility, signals to watch for that will indicate needs without verbal requests, absolute prohibitions against speaking unless directly addressed. The reception begins with processional precision. The French court assembles first, arranged in perfect order of precedence, radiating outward from the king and queen. You marvel at the spectacle even while maintaining your professional impassivity. The wealth displayed on noble bodies alone would support entire provinces. Diamonds large as walnuts, pearls the size of small eggs, gold and silver embroidery. so heavy that garments can barely move naturally, fabrics dyed with pigments worth more than a servant's lifetime wages. When the Spanish guests are announced, the room falls to perfect stillness. The visiting royalty enters in a strict order of rank, each introduction followed by carefully choreographed exchanges of bows and curtsies, calibrated to the exact degree appropriate between the specific ranks involved. Years of diplomatic preparation have gone into determining these physical expressions of relative status, and even the smallest deviation could cause international offense. For almost 2 hours, you stand perfectly motionless against the damask-covered wall, a living accessory to the room's magnificence. Your training allows you to maintain this position without visible discomfort, breathing slowly and shifting weight imperceptibly to prevent fainting. A not uncommon occurrence among servants required to stand for extended periods in overheated, crowded rooms. You observe the diplomatic ballet with practiced discretion, eyes lowered, yet missing nothing. The exchange of elaborate compliments in formal French and Spanish, the presentation of symbolic gifts, the careful navigation of potentially sensitive topics through layers of courtly language, all unfold according to plans developed over months of preparation. From your position, you note subtle indicators of the reception's success. The Spanish ambassador's tight expression gradually relaxes. The French ministers exchange satisfied glances when certain points are well received. The Queen, always more emotionally transparent than her husband, shows genuine pleasure when conversing with her Spanish counterparts, suggesting personal connections developing alongside political ones. As the reception concludes, guests move in procession toward the opera house, where a special performance has been commissioned for the occasion. Not all servants follow, only those specifically assigned to theatre service, so you have a brief respite to prepare for the evening's grand ball. This interlude allows you time to witness the palace in transition, that remarkable period when one elaborate event transforms into another through the coordinated efforts of hundreds of servants moving with practiced precision. While nobility enjoys the opera performance, an army of workers descends on the state apartments and hall of mirrors to make final preparations for the ball and banquet to follow. You assist with lighting the thousands of candles that will illuminate the evening's festivities, beginning at the farthest reaches of the state apartments and working methodically toward the hall of mirrors. Teams of servants move from chandelier to sconce to candelabra, bringing each wick to life until the entire suite of rooms blazes with golden light. The effect, when complete, transforms Versailles into something beyond ordinary physical space, a realm of light that seems to float suspended between heaven and earth. Gold surfaces capture and multiply the candlelight. Mirrors reflect it infinitely. Crystal prisms scatter it into rainbows that dance across marble and polished wood. No painting or description could capture the sensory totality of this illumination, a spectacle of light that has no equal in the modern world. With candles lit, attention turns to the final arrangements for the banquet. You help position the elaborate centerpieces, architectural fantasies crafted from sugar, marzipan, and spun glass that depict scenes symbolizing the friendship between France and Spain. These edible sculptures represent weeks of work by specialized confectioners, their details so precise that miniature flags bear accurate coats of arms, and tiny figures wear recognizable court attire. Musicians arrive to take their positions in balconies and alcoves throughout the reception rooms. They tune instruments discreetly, preparing for hours of continuous performance that will provide different music in each space. Stately minutes in the formal ballroom, lighter country dances in adjacent chambers, ambient compositions in dining areas. The complex coordination of these various musical offerings has been planned by the master of the king's music to prevent discordant overlapping as guests move between spaces. As evening fully descends, you assume your assigned position. For the ball tonight, you will serve in the Hall of Mirrors itself, stationed near one of the refreshment tables that line the inner wall. From here, you will have an unparalleled view of the evening's spectacle, while fulfilling your duty to offer beverages to thirsty dancers. The opera concludes, and within moments, the nobility begins to flow into the prepared spaces. Ladies and gentlemen, who appeared magnificent in daylight, now seem almost supernatural in the candlelit splendor of evening. Jewels flash with fire at every movement. Gold and silver embroidery captures light in metallic ripples. Silk and satin glow with inner luminescence. Powdered hair and whitened complexions create an otherworldly effect, as though the participants belong to some species apart from ordinary humanity. The king and his Spanish counterpart enter last, their arrival marked by a fanfare that silences all conversation. They process together through the Hall of Mirrors, acknowledging the profound bows and curtsies of the assembled guests with regal nods. When they reach the elevated platform prepared at the far end of the gallery, the master of ceremonies strikes his staff 3 times against the marble floor, signaling the official beginning of the ball. Music swells from the musicians' gallery, and the first dance begins. By tradition, it is performed only by the highest-ranking members of both courts, a minute so formal and precise that it resembles a military drill executed in silk and jewels. You observe the perfect geometry of the dance, lines forming, dividing, reuniting in patterns that express through movement the same hierarchical principles that govern every aspect of court life. As the evening progresses, more guests join the yafem dancing, and your duties at the refreshment table become increasingly demanding. You pour endless glasses of champagne, offer cool water flavored with fruit essences, present small confections designed to refresh dancers between exertions. Each serving requires precise etiquette, different forms of offering for different ranks, specific phrases of presentation, careful attention to the proper distance at which to stand when extending a tray. From your station, you witness countless small dramas unfolding within the larger spectacle. Political rivals exchange barbed compliments disguised as pleasantries. Ambitious mothers maneuver daughters into the paths of eligible noblemen. Courtiers compete for the attention of influential ministers through elaborate flattery or displays of wit. Long-standing court romances conduct silent conversations through the language of fans and glances, while new flirtations tentatively establish their codes. The focus of the evening shifts when doors are thrown open to reveal the banquet. Prepared in the adjoining gallery, hundreds of servants have synchronized this moment, uncovering dishes simultaneously across tables, stretching nearly the entire length of the room. Steam rises from hot selections, catching the candlelight to create a momentary mist above the feast. The aroma of hundreds of dishes, from roasted meats to exotic spiced confections, fills the air in a sensory announcement of unprecedented luxury. Your role changes with this transition. Now you must assist guests in navigating the complex protocol of the royal banquet. Though the meal appears to be a buffet where diners select their preferences, invisible rules govern who may approach which table first, which dishes are appropriate, for which ranks, even which servants may offer assistance to which guests. The technical challenges of service are immense. Maintaining perfect temperature for hot dishes, preventing delicate constructions from collapsing, ensuring that wine glasses never empty, replacing soiled plates with clean ones so discreetly that diners barely notice, all while navigating crowded spaces without ever touching a guest or interrupting a conversation. Throughout the banquet, you maintain constant awareness of your assigned nobles, anticipating their needs before they arise. The Spanish ambassador prefers red wine with meat courses, but white with fish. The Duchess of Polignac takes only the smallest portions, but requires frequent replacement of her water glass. The king's brother has a particular fondness for certain pastries that must be secured for him before they disappear from the common trays. As guests finish dining, attention shifts to the gardens, now transformed by illumination into a nighttime or wonderland. Thousands of lanterns outline the pathways, fountains, and decorative plantings, while larger installations create special effects among the formal hedges and groves. Servants have been lighting these displays sequentially throughout the evening, creating an inviting landscape that beckons the nobility outward. You follow your assigned group of guests as they venture into the gardens, carrying trays of digestives, small glasses of sweet wines and liqueurs designed to aid digestion and prolong the pleasant sensations of the meal. The night air provides welcome relief after hours in the overheated palace interiors, though you must remain alert to ladies who might require shawls against the evening chill. The culmination of the night approaches as guests are directed toward viewing areas for the fireworks display. This pyrotechnic spectacle represents the most technically advanced entertainment of the age. Explosives carefully formulated to produce specific colors and effects, launched in precisely timed sequences to create narratives in fire against the night sky. Nobles settle into designated areas based on rank, the closest positions reserved for royalty and the highest aristocracy. You assist with distributing cushions and lap blankets, ensuring that guests can enjoy the display in comfort. The anticipation is palpable. Despite their practiced sophistication, even the most worldly courtiers retain childlike excitement for the magic of fireworks. A signal rocket soars skyward, trailing golden sparks that reflect in the still waters of the Grand Canal. Momentary silence falls over the assembled thousands as all eyes follow its ascent. When it reaches its apex and bursts into a cascade of silver stars, the display begins in earnest, an orchestrated symphony of light and sound that will continue for nearly an hour. The fireworks tell a story through symbolic imagery, fleur-de-lis, in blue and white representing France, red and gold bursts forming the emblems of Spain, stylized scenes depicting historical alliances between the nations, culminating in a spectacular finale where both countries' symbols appear simultaneously in the largest explosions of the night. From your position behind the seated nobility, you have a perfect view of both the sky and the upturned faces illuminated by each colorful burst. The expressions of wonder, identical on faces whether royal or merely aristocratic, reveal a rare moment of shared human experience, transcending the rigid separations of rank. As the final explosions fade and the smoke drifts away on the night breeze, the celebration enters its final phase. Guests slowly make their way back toward the palace, where the Hall of Mirrors now awaits them in a new configuration. The dancing floor has been cleared, and gaming tables have been set up throughout the gallery. For those with energy remaining, after the day's extensive festivities, cards and dice offer new opportunities for entertainment, and for the gambling that forms an essential part of court social life. Your duties continue into these late hours. Now you circulate with trays of small refreshments designed to revive flagging energy. Chocolates infused with exotic spices, tiny pastries filled with fruit preserves, delicate biscuits flavored with almond and orange flower water. The consumption is minimal at this point, most appetites satisfied by the earlier banquet. but the offering must continue as long as guests remain active. The atmosphere has shifted subtly as night deepens. Formality gradually relaxes, conversations grow more animated, laughter comes more freely. The combination of abundant wine, successful diplomacy, and the natural intimacy that develops through hours of shared experience creates a temporarily less rigid social environment. You observe these changes with professional detachment while continuing your service. Though the nobility may forget themselves slightly as fatigue and wine take effect, servants must maintain perfect composure regardless of the hour or circumstances. Your movements remain as precise at 3 in the morning as they were at the celebration's beginning. Your attention to protocol unwavering despite your own exhaustion. The Spanish royalty withdrew shortly after the fireworks, escorted to their apartments with formal ceremony despite the late hour. Their departure signals permission for lower-ranking guests to begin leaving as well, though many French courtiers will continue their revels until dawn. A ceremonial guard accompanies the foreign dignitaries, while selected servants, not you thankfully, are assigned to attend them through the night in case any needs arise. As the crowd gradually thins, you are finally released from direct service. However, your workday is far from complete. Now begins the enormous task of restoring the palace to order, a process that will continue through what remains of the night and well into the following day. You join teams of servants clearing the debris of celebration from the state apartments. Crystal glasses must be counted and returned to storage, silver platters collected and transported to washing rooms, furniture repositioned according to normal arrangements. The physical evidence of revelry, spilled wine, dropped food, scattered flowers, must be removed before it can stain precious surfaces or attract vermin. The work is methodical and exhausting, made more challenging by the late hour and the accumulated fatigue of your long day. Yet there is a different atmosphere among the servants now, a pride in having successfully executed an event of such magnitude, a shared sense of accomplishment that temporarily bridges the usual divisions within the household hierarchy. Senior servants who normally maintain strict formal distance now work alongside juniors, sharing anecdotes from previous celebrations or commenting on particularly successful elements of the evening. Stories circulate about guest behaviors observed from servant perspectives. The Spanish lady who danced with unexpected vigor, the French count who drank himself into embarrassing indiscretion, the rival duchesses who conducted a silent war of position throughout the banquet. These observations, shared only among those who serve, represent a kind of power rarely acknowledged. The power of witnesses whose very invisibility grants them access to the unguarded moments of the supposedly great. Though servants may bow and scrape before nobility, their private knowledge of human frailties creates a subtle counterbalance to their formal subservience. As you work through the night, the true cost of the celebration becomes apparent. Despite careful handling, valuable items have been damaged, crystal stems snapped, porcelain chipped, silver dented. Food sufficient to feed a village for months has been partially consumed and partially wasted. Wine worth a year's wages for ordinary workers has flowed like water for a few hours' pleasure. The financial resources expended for this single diplomatic event would support hundreds of families for years. These thoughts pass through your mind without judgment as you continue your tasks. The economics and politics of Versailles exist beyond. Your influence and survival requires acceptance of your role within its established order. Your position, comfortable compared to many in France, depends entirely on the continued functioning of this system of spectacular display and rigid hierarchy. Dawn approaches as the major public spaces finally return to their normal state. The Hall of Mirrors, scene of such extraordinary activity hours before, now stands silent and orderly, morning light beginning to replace the glow of candles that have burned through the night. Only subtle indications, a lingering scent of perfume and powder, the slightly dulled shine of marble floors that will require special cleaning later, betray the recent festivities. You are at last released to seek a few hours' rest before regular palace routine resumes. Your body aches with exhaustion as you make your way through back corridors to the servants' quarters. The shared room is nearly empty, most of your usual companions still engaged in restoration work throughout the palace. As you remove your formal livery, carefully hanging it for cleaning and storage until the next major event, you reflect on your role in the spectacle now concluded. Your individual contribution seems minimal when considered alone. Glasses filled, trays carried, candles lit. Yet you formed an essential thread in the vast tapestry of service that made the diplomatic triumph possible. Without the coordinated efforts of hundreds like yourself, skilled, disciplined, and invisible, the display of royal power and national prestige could not have occurred. The diplomacy conducted amid splendor, the allegiances formed or strengthened through shared experience of magnificence, the international relationships advanced through calculated hospitality, all depended on the foundation of service performed by those whose names history will never record. You settle onto your narrow bed, sleep approaching rapidly despite the unusual hour. In your final moments of consciousness, fragments of the celebration drift through your mind. The infinite reflections of candlelight in the Hall of Mirrors, music floating through illuminated gardens, fireworks painting momentary pictures against the night sky, the king and queen in their full regalia embodying the glory of France. These images blend with more immediate sensory memories, the weight of silver trays against your palms, the heat of crowded rooms against your skin, the ache of muscles held too long in formal posture, the relief of cool night air when you finally stepped outside. Together, they form your complete experience of the event, neither the purely aesthetic appreciation available to guests, nor the total ignorance of those excluded entirely, but the unique perspective of one who simultaneously creates and witnesses magnificence. Sleep claims you at last, your body surrendering to exhaustion as sunlight strengthens beyond your small window. In a few hours, you will rise again to resume ordinary service in a palace gradually returning to its normal rhythms. The great celebration, for all its splendor and significance, will soon become merely another memory in your years at Versailles, a particularly magnificent instance of the endless cycle of display that defines life within these gilded walls. As your consciousness fades, you carry with you the knowledge that another such event will eventually come, another opportunity to participate in the creation of splendor that exceeds ordinary human experience. This is the peculiar privilege of your position, to dwell perpetually at the intersection of the mundane and the magnificent, to enable extraordinary beauty through ordinary labor to be simultaneously removed from and essential to the grand spectacle that is Versailles. In this final thought before dreams claim you completely, there is neither resentment nor romantic idealization, but simple recognition of your place within the intricate mechanism of palace life. Tomorrow will bring its own duties and demands, its own small satisfactions and difficulties. The great celebration, now concluded, takes its place in the continuing story of your life as a servant in the most magnificent palace in Europe. One day among countless others in service to the enduring spectacle of Versailles. Subscribe for more peaceful stories, will be here every night.